Okay. Good evening. Assalamualaikum. Namaskar to everybody. Bengali Academia for Social Empowerment has been conducting lecture series since last 2 months. Today's lecture is base lecture number 36, and mm, today I would request Professor Nargis Ahmed to welcome and introduce today's speaker as well as today's chairs. Professor Nargis Ahmed, it's over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes,
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 yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you, Sanbhai and Matin sir. Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all of you present here. It is my pleasure to welcome and introduce today's speaker and also chair. So, Dr. Sumit Maskar is our today's speaker. Dr. Sumit Maskar is an associate professor and associate dean, student affairs at the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, Jindal Global University. He holds a research partner position at the Max Planck Institute for the Study of Religious and Ethnic Diversity in Germany. Dr. Maskar received his MA and MPhil degree in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, as well as doctor in philosophy in sociology from the University of Oxford. He has previously held positions at the Center for South Asia, Stanford University, USA, Center for Modern Indian Studies, University of Göttingen, Germany, International Center for Development and Decent Work, Kassel University, Germany. Dr. Maskar has been a recipient of the prestigious research award from the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation for conducting his postdoctoral research in Göttingen on the rural-urban migration to Mumbai city. His research interests are economic sociology of labor, rural-urban migration, educational attainment, and occupational choices, and labor history. Dr. Maskar's doctoral thesis examined Mumbai's mill worker responses to joblessness as a result of textile mill closure. He has published opinion pieces in the Where, the Print, Hindustan Times, and the Outlook. His academic writings have been published in edited books, policy reports, and peer-reviewed journals. We are happy, sir, to get you here with us today to have your kind deliberation on Base Lecture Series number 36 on the topic, very important and interesting topic, the neglected warriors of Corona pandemic. We are eagerly waiting for your presentation, sir. Thank you. But let me introduce and welcome our speaker also. So I'm glad to introduce Mohammad
Chair. Ma'am,
Manirul
our chair.
Islam.
Madam, chair,
Sir?
chair. It's not speaker.
Yeah. So I'm glad to welcome our chair today, Mohammad Manirul Islam, Assistant Professor from Presidency University, to chair today's session. Sir did his BA and MA in English from Kalyani University, as well as PhD also. He is NET and SLATE qualified. Sir has started his career as an assistant professor at Asanagar Madan Mohan Tarkalankar College, Nadia, in 2008, and subsequently moved to Acharya Jagadish Chandra Bose College, Kolkata. The area of research Sir has long engagement with is British Romantic poetry. Later, he developed interest in post-humanist discourse and pilgrimage as a cultural practice. Sir has several publications as monograph, book chapters, journal articles, seminar proceedings, and course modules under UGC MHRD EPG Pathshala. So, Manirul sir, thank you for joining us today, and we are extending our heartfelt gratitude that for your kind consent for chairing today's session. So, sir, over to you. Thank you.
Professor Monirul Islam, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm audible now. Yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
thank you. I mean, I didn't know so much about myself the way I have been spoken about. Thank you, Bess, for inviting me to chair the session. We have amongst us today an acclaimed researcher and an academician, Dr. Sumit Maskar. Now, Dr. Sumit Maskar will be speaking today on the issue of neglected warriors of the corona pandemic. Now, this topic is very interesting to me, as I can guess that Dr. Maskar will be speaking on those groups of people whose existence and forefront role during the corona pandemic goes unrecognized. Indeed, we hear about the doctors, the nurses, and obviously attention-seeking politicians, but we don't hear about those people down the order without whose life actually, without whose contribution rather, our life would come to a kind of standstill during the corona times. So let us hope Dr. Maskar's presentation becomes a kind of tribute to the sweepers, to the drivers, to the scavengers, all those people lower down the order. So without, taking any further time, I'd request Dr. Maskar to start his deliberations on the topic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for this generous introduction. And of course, thanks Abdul and the Bengal Academia for Social Empowerment, that is BASE, for organizing this talk and having me here to share my views on the neglected warriors of the corona pandemic. I have been also following very regularly the lectures that are organized by the BASE, and I have been extremely impressed by the wide-ranging topics that were organized, and I hope to actually follow more of these discussions that are going to be organized in future. I think corona is something that doesn't require much of introduction, much of background, because we are living in this particular moment where the corona has really affected each and every human being around the world. Of course, the impact has been varied. Some people have been affected more, and some people have been affected pretty less. But no one can deny that it has completely transformed the way we have been living so far. As far as our own country, India, is concerned, it's been nearly 4 months since the first lockdown was announced. We are, of course, familiar what kind of impact this has on our minds and on our physical movement. And of course, everyone is familiar here with all kinds of impact it has on the society, economy, and politics. So I'm not going to cover these wide-ranging impact that corona has on the economy, society, and politics. I will restrict myself to the discussion on the neglected warriors of the corona pandemic. And by neglected warriors, I refer to the waste pickers, the sanitation workers, the manual scavengers, and of course, the other section, which I will not be spending much time, are those workers who work in crematorium. Okay, and I'm happy to discuss that particular topic during the question and answer session. And this particular section, which I am calling as the neglected warriors, this has been working when the government strictly restricted the movement of each and every one. But before I begin with these particular neglected warriors, I would like to spend like a few minutes very briefly to talk generally about the conditions of corona, some of these important conditions which are very much relevant to this particular neglected warriors. Because without taking into account these conditions, we won't be able to appreciate why why this particular workforce has to be given the due that they have been, the kind of work they have been doing. So as far as to begin with, everyone, as I said, is very much aware how corona is a contagious and it's a life-threatening virus, and the very fact that a corona infected person can easily pass on the disease to other has created a kind of environment of suspicion and fear. As a result, besides being life-threatening disease, corona has also acquired a stigma to it. That is, the one who is infected with corona now not only has to recover from that particular ailing health, but they also experience the brunt of stigma from the society. For instance, those who were infected by coronavirus had to face hostility from the particular localities that they were living in. Immediate distancing of, like particularly physical distancing, is observed with the corona infected person. The fear of that deadly virus is so huge that even the ones who have been through the medical procedures with negative results are being ostracized. In fact, the suspicion of corona has evoked strong and at times violent reactions. Some of the corona symptoms, such as cough, fever, muscle pain, and sore throat, are usually overlooked in the normal times. However, in the present scenario, anyone with these kind of symptoms is seen as a corona-infected body and is therefore subjected to ostracization, which again, as I said, can involve brutal forms. It is precisely for this reason, in the initial months, the governments around the world had appealed to the people to step outside their homes only for buying basic necessities and medical emergencies. Besides, there were strict instructions by the health organizations, the World Health Organization in particular, that you need to wash your hands for 20 seconds with soap or alcohol based, and then when you cough, you have to cover your mouth. So there are kind of instructions that were given, and all those who may have symptoms have to be quarantined for 14 days. The bottom line is that people were expected to stay at home, simple, and not really step outside their homes. And in the past 4 months, what we have seen is that how staying at home, particularly taking care of yourself and the safety, is actually a luxury. It is not really available for everyone, and this is the biggest luxury for people, those who can stay home and just carry on their livelihood. We have also seen millions of low-income migrant laborers who have returned to their villages by walking for days. But on the other hand, you have a big amount of population that is now safely staying at homes, in their homes, and they're taking care of themselves. On the other hand, however, you have a long list of workers and professionals who are working, without whom people who are staying safe at home cannot really stay safe. These are largely the corona warriors, So, but usually, I mean, of course, there are warriors. We all know there are these doctors, there are police, there is nurses, ward boys, and then what I include them as the neglected ones: the waste picker, the sanitation workers, the manual scavengers, and those who work in crematoriums. However, in general, when we talk of warrior as a category, what comes immediately to our mind are the soldiers and the army officers who are guarding the border of respective countries around the world. However, in these present times, even those soldiers who are otherwise protecting the borders are themselves vulnerable to the coronavirus. Therefore, a new set of warriors have emerged, and I just mentioned the list of warriors. However, the role played by the doctors and police, and to a certain extent nurses, have been recognized by the society. In everyday news, we hear about the number of police staff and doctors who are performing their duty by risking their lives. The news media is also reporting regularly when a particular police professional is affected by corona, and some have even lost their lives while performing the duty. various governments have actually reported like compensation. They have announced compensation to these police personnel due to the loss during performing their duty in this time of Corona. The doctors, nurses who are also coming in close contact with those particular patients are clearly seen as heroes in this particular extraordinary times. However, we rarely hear about the sanitation workers, the manual scavengers, the workers from crematorium. These workers predominantly come from Dalit communities across religion, that is Dalits within Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, and Christians. There are also some other backward caste communities which are engaged in other kind of manual occupations. But as far as sanitation work and manual scavenging is concerned, it is predominantly Dalits who are engaged in these occupations. And it is this section that plays a very crucial role inside the hospitals as well as various localities where people are living safely. In both these places, their work is extremely crucial. Now, let me begin with hospitals. In the hospitals, doctors by themselves cannot perform their duties unless they are supported by a massive army of hospital staff, which is nurses, ward boys, and the sanitation workers. The cleaning and sanitation workers are given the responsibility of cleaning the wards and the human waste the patients produce. Now, the patients in the critical care wards are heavily dependent on cleaning and sanitation workers to clean their bodies. They clean the patient bodies who are not able to perform the basic function of disposing their urine and human waste in the toilets. Without these clean bodies, the doctors cannot examine those patients. Even those patients who can use the toilets on their own, the toilet itself has to be cleaned on a regular basis. If these sanitation workers do not carry out their duties, because if they are, I mean, I'm sure like everyone else, they are also afraid of getting corona infections, then the doctors and nurses who are otherwise seen as the heroes in this particular movement, even they cannot carry out their duties. It is the sanitation workers who are pretty much at the forefront of getting infected by the coronavirus. Now, besides taking care of the patients, cleaning the hospitals, also the hospital produce like massive amounts of waste every day. So every day you have tons of cotton, syringes, chemicals, substances, all the kinds of medicines. These are also like the medicine comes in different kind of packs. So all these packs are thrown. So it is the sanitation workers who actually end up cleaning that particular waste and putting them in a particular order so that it is then transported to the dumping grounds. However, these workers do not have access to decent working and living conditions. They do not have necessary equipments for cleaning the waste or to clean different kinds of tasks that are assigned to them inside the hospitals. Now that's as far as hospitals are concerned. You see that clearly, and this is India is India has particularly more vulnerable conditions for this stuff, but this is the situation probably in the most of the South Asian countries as well. The second group, again, this is sanitation workers and manual scavengers, but now this is a different kind of space where they are working. Now, the second group that we can think about are those hired by the municipal corporations across the country. Municipal corporations or whichever small districts which hire people to do the cleaning work. Now, this particular sanitation work involves collecting various kinds of waste from houses and then organizing that particular waste and transporting that to the dump yards, then cleaning the septic tanks and maintaining the sewers. Now, during the lockdown and even today, most people who are staying at home inside because of the fear of corona, but this is particularly largely the middle classes who pretty much are not really going out because of this infection. Now, despite the lockdown, whatever physical isolation that everyone is supposed to follow, and much talk about quarantining, human beings who are staying at home are producing waste. And that waste must be collected by somebody. And here, this is where we have the waste pickers. Now, those who stay at home, I mean, generally we do not think of people that, okay, they're just staying at home. But just by staying at home, also people produce a large amount of waste. Now, this includes the waste that is generated by people when they cook vegetables, they cook mutton, chicken, fish, or they just prepare any kinds of food material. Okay, so each kind of preparation will also involve throwing away a big amount of waste. Okay. Then, of course, people also clean their own apartments. They dump all kinds of medicine waste if they are having medicines at home. Then there are biscuit wrappers. Then there is leftover food. Now, this is a huge amount of waste that is produced every day in all these households. And this waste is, as I said, is pretty much produced on everyday basis. And it also has to be cleaned on everyday basis. Otherwise, the waste from that food or other products will produce stinking smell inside the houses. And in fact, in some cases, that might also attract certain kind of diseases if it is not thrown at the right time. Now, if production of waste is so crucial to human living, then one can understand the importance of sanitation workers, manual scavengers, and waste pickers. However, these sanitation workers, again, do not receive like any basic equipment, any protective gear, any kind of proper masks to collect those particular waste. The reason I read these particular instructions at the beginning of this presentation was to highlight that we are living in a very extraordinary time where each and every human being is told to use mask when they go outside to buy any stuff or to meet anyone. You are supposed to keep a particular distance. You are constantly told to use sanitizers or wash your hands with soap. And in this particular moment, we have these neglected warriors who are not offered any kind of these equipments, and yet they are expected to perform the kind of job they are doing, which is absolutely essential for human living. The consequences for this sanitation work. So this particular work is, of course, very important for human living, but there are absolutely hazardous consequences on these sanitation workers, particularly their health. Especially when you talk about those workers who are at the dumping grounds, because the dumping grounds contains a very high ratio of organic and inorganic waste. That waste includes animal feces and the decomposing carcasses of dogs and other small animals. And that a great many rubbish depots are cleaned, not necessarily daily. So all these dumping, all these rubbish depots are not necessarily put in order on a very daily basis. Sometimes they could be cleaned on once a week or twice, and most of the time they are cleaned partially. And the collection of these variety of wastes, provides conditions for the production of methane, hydrogen, sulfide, putrescine, cadaverine, and other toxic chemical compounds. So the waste, all of these waste, even like the waste that is, been lying around anywhere. So if that waste stays on the same place for several days, it produces these all kinds of chemical compounds. Now, these are the sanitation workers actually. They come in contact with these gaseous substances. And because they come in these particular gaseous substances, and because they do not have protective gear, they do not have a mask, they do not have gloves proper, and then they are directly exposed to these very poisonous gases, which actually has an impact on their loss of appetite. So they absolutely don't feel like eating. It also impacts their memory. It also has an impact on the fluid in their lungs. They have irritation in the eyes, and it has massive impact on their breath. It actually results into the shortening of their breath. There is chest pain, sore throat, and also loss of libido. So you can see that just because they perform these labor, they are exposed to so many wide-ranging health issues. And as I said, and I want to repeat that point again, that without the labor of these sanitation workers, manual scavengers, waste pickers, we cannot perform our daily life. You cannot have a daily routine for your life. Now, as far as household is concerned, I have spoken about the kind of waste that is produced by cooking and other kind of medicines that are thrown, the biscuit wrappers, and all kinds of products. Like when you buy bread, you also produce, you throw away that plastic. So you are producing so much of waste in that way. But the other waste that, again, people do not really take into account is used for disposing urine and human waste. So every day, individuals use toilets to urinate and to dispose their feces. This process obviously begins with the birth of living beings, and it goes on until their last breath. To put it simply, then, to live is to produce waste. Since this is the most basic function of human living, it has to be performed regularly. And in order to perform this function, the sewers in the cities have to be cleaned or maintained by the sanitation workers and the manual scavengers. The workers who clean the sewers face a risk of dying by entering the sewers. Okay, today we are talking about the death because of the corona infection, that some people have been infected by the corona, and then by the time they go to the hospital and they are dead. And every day for the last 4 months, from morning to evening, you open any channel, and the one thing that is constantly being reported are the number of people who are infected by it and the number of people who have died of corona. But one thing we have really not spoken at all in all these years is the death of sanitation workers. Okay, so as far as sanitation workers and manual scavengers are concerned, the death of sanitation workers while cleaning the sewers particularly is almost a regular occurrence. So figures from 2017 and 18 informs us that one person has died every 5 days while cleaning the sewers and septic tanks across the country. Okay, so irrespective of corona, you have the deaths of sanitation workers, and who perform one of the most crucial functions so that the rest of the population can carry out their everyday life. There is one estimate that suggests that the death rate of workers cleaning sewers is 5 times more than the death of urban Indians between the age of 15 to 59. Now, sanitation workers who go inside the sewers are exposed to methane and sulfurated hydrogen instead of oxygen. And now we all know what can happen to anyone who do not have access to oxygen. Now, this particular exposure to methane and sulfurated hydrogen acts in a similar manner to cyanide, with reversible inhibition of respiratory enzyme and cytochrome oxide. It simply means you are absolutely unable to breathe inside that particular manhole where these sanitation workers and manual scavengers enter to clean. What happens usually in such cases is that these workers die due to asphyxiation caused by the intake of harmful gases during this cleaning process. According to Safai Karmachari Andolan, that campaigns for the elimination of manual scavenging, nearly 1,800 workers have died while cleaning this during the last decade. Until now, this has been this work particularly has been invisibilized. So people barely paid attention to manual scavengers, to waste pickers, also those who are cleaning the streets. But until this particular corona that hit the globe, municipal corporations collected the garbage from all kinds of localities, and the residents barely even noticed their presence inside their localities. In South Delhi, where I am located, people barely even realize that there is one particular van which actually plays this particular song called Gaadi Wala Aaya Ghar Se Kachra Nikal. This is written by Shyam Bairagi, and which is played by all these waste trucks that come to collect waste. And people have barely even noticed the presence of this vehicle. that comes regularly, because they have this alternate arrangement where privately they pay somebody to come and collect. However, because these private arrangement of collecting of waste had to be stopped, because these workers were extremely low paid and they did not even come to, because they were also afraid, so they didn't come to collect the waste. So then these middle class and upper middle class localities were then dependent on these municipal corporation trucks, which then came at a particular moment during the day. It is only then several residents finally realized that, oh my goodness, this is the most important activity during their day. So otherwise they were very much locked inside their homes. They were doing either working from home, or they had the luxury of cooking some fancy dishes or being creative with different kinds of activities. But one thing that pretty much changed the whole thing was this arrival of the truck. They had to go and dump their particular trash inside the truck, because if they didn't do that, they had to wait for another day. And as I said, this particular waste, if it stays on for too long in the house, first of all, it stinks, but it also has the potential to produce certain kind of viruses, which might create certain kind of infection. In fact, when we talk of manual scavenger itself, returning to the manual scavengers itself, scholars have noted that how not only they are exposed to these very life-threatening kind of diseases, some even die while doing the work, but even on the regular basis when they do the work, they feel extremely nauseated. At times they have this vomiting feeling, and they just lose the appetite completely. A particular telling response has been recorded by certain scholars, and manual scavengers reported them that when they started this particular work, they found it extremely difficult to eat the dal, the yellow lentils, for a couple of months. In fact, they could not eat much anything of that yellow color because they feel so much disgusted by their own hands. Now, despite the fact that sanitation workers are engaged in life-threatening labor, they are hired by Strait on the contractual basis. So not only their work itself is dangerous, they are actually having health consequences. They do not feel like living properly because they can't eat and they just can't think properly because it has so much impact on their wide-ranging lifestyle. Even that work itself is not at all well paid. They are hired on contractual basis, and due to this contractual arrangement, the salaries, the sanitation workers, have absolutely low salaries. They are deprived of any kind of social security benefits, which are available to any regular employees, such as gratuity, bonus, medical facilities, retirement benefits. On the other, one therefore encounters that sanitation workers, manual scavengers with lower wages. Like at times there is a massive gap. So, for example, a permanent sanitation workers in municipal corporation, say in Delhi, would start the salary maybe at 25,000, and the same employee, after nearly working for 15-20 years, the salary would increase to 90,000 or 1,20,000 per month, as per the 7th pay commission. And in addition to salary, there are other benefits that these workers receive. On the other hand, and this is the overwhelming majority, the contract workers, the sanitation workers, manual scavengers who are hired on contractual basis, they are paid on daily basis, and the salaries can range between 6,000 to 11,000. And despite spending sometimes 10 years, 11 years, the salaries, the structure does not change. Okay, and so this is something extremely important. And I have been also doing some field work in Delhi, and this has absolutely come to our notice that the salary structures, salary does not change even by spending 15-20 years. And therefore, what is the most crucial, obviously, is that the work itself has to be transformed. The way the work is carried out right now, the way sanitation work, the way our septic tanks are cleaned, the way our manholes are cleaned, the manual work has to completely stop. But in addition to that, the workers need to be paid what is due to them, especially because the kind of function they do is extremely essential for the everyday living of the entire population. However, the problems of all these sanitation, the neglected warriors that I'm calling them together, does not really end with this particular problem with income security, income insecurity. There is the work itself has a very humiliating nature, and therefore it does not have it does only has a rather low social status, and also has a stigma. And stigmatized occupations, they are of course precarious in nature. Um, and of course, these are not necessarily the most sought after occupations. And these are there are maybe some other discussion might be needed to explain why these workers end up doing that consistently. And to address this particular kind of problem, now we have Manual Scavengers Act. It is known as the Prohibition of the Employment as Manual Scavengers and Rehabilitation Act, that was passed in 2013. This act has two aspects. The first is to put an end to such occupations, and the second is to rehabilitate these groups. However, the banning of these occupations is one, and implementing of this provision is another. And neither it has been banned, and neither of the provisions are really implemented. There are consistent efforts that are being made by various Dalit groups who work among these groups to highlight these particular problems. However, the most striking aspect here is that every day when we open the news channel, we are informed how many patients are infected by coronavirus, how many how many deaths have occurred because of it. At times, we also get to hear how many police personnel have been infected by it, how many police have died because of it. At the same time, the state has never declared how many manual scavengers are there in the country, how many of them actually end up using their bare hands to clean the human waste, particularly, and how many deaths have occurred. Okay, so these deaths are not really reported because the deaths also evoke now a compensation. So this particular kind of information that the state is not necessarily contributing to our knowledge. So at the same time, when you have coronavirus deaths, we don't really see the deaths of manual scavengers. Okay. Now, obviously, what has happened at the very beginning, there was this Prime Minister call for clapping and the Thali sound that was specially done to honor the work that was done by these workers. However, raising a hand for clapping or doing this Thali sound to honor the workers has not really changed their working and living conditions at all in any way. And more importantly, how people look towards these kind of workforce. So that has not changed, unfortunately. And this is also similar to different kinds of schemes which are meant for the sanitation workers and manual scavengers. As I have mentioned already, that this particular work is extremely stigmatized and it is performed under extreme inhuman conditions. According to the census of India 2011, there are roughly 8 lakh latrines in India, from which night soil is removed manually. About 2.5 million of the total sanitation workers face occupational hazards. And since this is a lecture organized by people based in Calcutta, and I believe there is more audience from the state of West Bengal, then I would like to also highlight this fact that West Bengal still has 2.8 lakh dry latrines, which are cleaned manually. Now, this is a very interesting fact that needs to be highlighted here, especially because it shows that no matter which political party actually rules in the state, whether it's Congress, it's BJP, or it's the left front, or the different regional parties, by and large, they have not really done much, with the exception of 1 or 2 political parties which are slightly sensitive. But by and large, what we see is that this particular practice, which should have been ended, have continued to persist. Now, one of the things, obviously now the left front is no more ruling, but it is important to highlight that the left front ruled for nearly 34 years in the state of West Bengal. And 34 years of consistent rule is a long enough period to bring about a transformation. And particularly these kind of inhuman labor that has persisted in the society. And this is one of the most biggest failure of the left front government. There are, I'm sure the scholars who are working on Bengal can also highlight other stuff, and they can analyze what has happened and what has changed since then. But this is one thing they have failed miserably. But this also says that despite having explicitly pro-labor kind of thoughts and ideologies, they have absolutely failed to look at this absolutely crucial workforce. Now, even though the labor and sanitation workers are so vital, that work is absolutely invisibilized. They are despised. The work is undervalued. They are absolutely underpaid, and they are stigmatized as well, obviously. Sanitation workers, then they are also the worst victims of this stigmatization. And therefore, despite all these disabilities that sanitation workers, manual scavengers, the waste picker they face, by doing that work in the critical moment, they are actually helping us to, to the spread of other kind of viruses that might be spreading because the waste is not collected on time, the sewers are not clean. So all these things, if these tasks are not performed, you will have different kinds of diseases that will spread across the society in addition to corona pandemic. And yet, what has happened so far is that we haven't been able to appreciate the importance of this section of workforce. And so at a time now when we are appreciating, we are praising the doctors and maybe even the police personnel for being the warriors at the time of pandemic, it is also important to remember these neglected warriors and the kind of important role they are performing in this particular moment, but also even when the normal circumstances are there, when we are not confronted with such kind of international emergency, so to say. And I hope that some of these aspects which I have just highlighted as far as the neglect of the corona warriors, eventually at some point, the wider society will acknowledge, and the state will make enough provisions to improve the conditions of their work and to also stop the manual cleaning of human waste, the septic tanks, and also prohibit all kinds of deaths that are caused due to these kind of practices. And I'll stop here. Thank you. Yeah, Abdul, I'm done. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Nurullah, is
Yeah,
there any questions? Yeah, good.
Yeah, I mean, it has been wonderful listening to you, Dr. Maskar.
Thank you.
There are many takeaways actually from your lecture. Okay, the first thing is, the kind of clarity that you have provided on the process we produce waste, maybe in our households or in the hospitals, and the work protocols, I mean, that are to be followed, and especially the role of the sanitation workers and the kind of risk that is involved in the work. So all these issues came up in your lecture. The other issues that I think it's very important that you have pointed out is the failure of the government and the political parties in actually addressing the issues of the sanitation workers. So I think overall it was a very rather much needed lecture, and I would like to thank the organizers for arranging this. And if I think next you will take up questions if there are any. Okay, Martin?
Yeah, there are a few questions, I guess. Those who would like to ask, you have any comments or questions, please go ahead with your questions. Okay, by the way, I have one thing to ask if the chair permits me. I was interested in making like, well, you have given the example of West Bengal, and I've also gone through few literature and also the speeches of famous Vijwada Wilson on the issues of Safai Karmachari Abhiyan Andolan. My point is that see, generally the way we understand Bengal politics, I'm insider, but you from the far away, the kind of progressive enlightenment, progressive, and all sorts of jargons. Like as a student of political science, how do you understand it? The entire issues of you know, the Safai Karmachari and approaches of political parties. In a way, you have spoken about 2 or 3 political parties which are sensitive. I mean, could you enlighten and a bit highlight on that?
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Abdul, for this question. I think, you know, when I was talking about political parties in general, that they have not been sensitive, I think what we must keep in mind is that political parties are also responding to the society. And the trouble itself here is that the society at large itself is very insensitive when it comes to this particular population. And that is precisely the reason the political parties are not really interested in this population. So that's one part. The other part being the big time contractualization. Now that has a big impact on the politicization of the sanitation workers across the country. If you look at really, you know, I was doing some work on the Bombay of the late 19th century. So already in 1890s, the sanitation workers of Bombay went on a big strike, okay, against the kind of conditions, working conditions. So if that was really possible more than 100 years ago, the trouble here is that right now, I mean, of course, the politicization part is there. There is organizational part, but contractualization also plays a big part in this particular situation. Now, as far as the issue is concerned here, of course, there are 2 kind of reactions to this particular occupations. One is Bezwada kind of reaction, where he says this occupation has to end there itself. That's it. Finish. We are not discussing this occupation. Whoever does, we don't care. The other side of reaction is to make changes in the way the occupation is carried out. The biggest problem, obviously, with this particular occupation is its link to the caste. So the problem here is that the same caste is consistently doing this labor generation after generation, and this is where the biggest problem is. You know, of course, this is not to say that this, you know, if every caste is doing this, is perfectly fine. Well, if all, you know, people from all castes are actually engaging in this occupation, then it becomes just a labor problem, because any caste is. It becomes a caste and a labor problem together, because it's only Dalits who are predominantly from all religions who are engaged in these occupations. And this is where, I mean, to be actually, some things are promising, like Bezwada is the face of that particular movement, but there are wide-ranging different unions that are engaged in this particular you know, movement. Particularly, there have been movements where they are breaking down the dry latrines, but it's a very big task, because unless and until the state creates structures for rehabilitation, it is not very easy to give up, because you can give up the occupation, and then what next? Okay, so this is a challenge. This is not to say that they should continue. They should definitely give up. It's just that it does not immediately occur that what exactly can you do next. Okay, but that's first part of it. The second part here is the moment you stop, there is a violent reaction from the society. The other society which is dependent on these manual scavengings particularly, they react sometimes in a violent manner. They stop their basic facilities. If you go to rural areas, they do not allow them to take whatever the basic water and other facilities. If they react in a way that they will not do this work. Now, so it's not that there are these people who are working on their own. So they are, in many cases, they are actually forced to do this particular kind of work. And so we are in this particular vicious circle where these things are happening. Now, the reason I also highlighted the case of West Bengal is that, the political party that was ruling the state of West Bengal is explicitly in favor of labor, working or talking about the conditions of labor. But they have not really done anything at all. In fact, West Bengal is one of the highest, the state with highest number of manual scavengings. Also, there are many other states. UP is definitely one of the important states. You have sometimes BSP doing certain kind of changes here and there. But the problem itself is that the new political party comes and it again goes back to square one. Okay, so I think it's a wider problem. First is society. The second, state. Because the first important thing that was done with the Manual Scavenging Act in 2013 was that we first need to make a list of how many manual scavengers we have. And so far, we do not have the exact figures because all the state agency, all the municipal corporations do not report that they have manual scavengers. They do not, so they are not cooperating. So none of the state agencies are cooperating for this. So unless we have the number, we cannot go to the next step of having a concrete rehabilitation program. So although there is money that is always allocated, so if you look at budgets, so you have massive amount of money that is allocated. But sometimes that money is used to buy cleaning equipments. So, but that cleaning equipment, that's not for the welfare of the sanitation worker. The cleaning equipment is for the entire society. And I think this is where, as a society also, we need to take this seriously, and only then we can expect the political parties. So this is my view. Because unless and until there is a pressure from the society at large, political parties, irrespective of the fact whether they are extremely good and very radical, they will not take up this particular issue.
Abid, why don't you go ahead and ask your questions?
Hello, Maskar bhai.
Yes, Abid, yeah. Abid bhai, yeah.
Yeah, I read an article once in the round table where there was a particular example of a very well-skilled, higher educated Dalit man who was still into manual scavenging because he did not get a job that suited his skill profile. So why do you think well-skilled, highly educated Dalits are still doing this work?
Okay, so as far as, so there is a particular context, because I'm more familiar with the city of Mumbai and the way things function there. What usually happens is that these jobs are also linked to the housing arrangement in many places. So particularly in Bombay city, what happens is that many a times the families, if they want to continue in the same house, they have to send one member of the family into that particular occupation. Now, this is the biggest, one of the big reasons, but it also is the case with many occupations. But since you highlighted this particular part, there have been cases reported already in the 1990s. There has been cases where people, even with bachelor degree, they unfortunately had to take up this sanitation work. So that is the only explanation I can offer immediately. Yeah.
Okay, I am going to moderate questions from now. Narendra Singh has a question for you. What type of effort can be made to end this manual scavenging is there any particular technology that can help, or how can we totally stop it?
See, I think, of course, one has to take wide-ranging measures, but the first and the most important thing is that you need to make sure that there is mechanization of this work. Okay. Obviously, one also then needs to make sure that our sewers are constructed in a proper manner, because if you look at many older parts of the city, the sewers are located in such a very tiny lane where the machines can't enter. So there is overall, the system has to change in order to end this particular occupation. And obviously one needs to really, as I said, much of this pressure needs to come from the society, that they should feel really disgusted that such a kind of practice is actually functioning. And until and unless that happens, the change from the top is not going to happen. Because manual scavenging as a practice is obviously, historically speaking, everywhere in the world it was practiced. But if you look now, in the West, it has stopped completely. And this has nothing to do with, like, because they are rich countries. I have lived there for a decade. Abdul has been traveling and he has lived. And we have all seen that we do not see such kind of practices happening in the West. And it's not because they're extremely rich. You don't need that extremely, massive resources to have this technology. So I think it's the willingness of the state is very much needed, and that willingness is also clearly dependent on the social pressure that we exert. So this is, I think, my own suggestion is to have more social pressure, and then the political act will happen. Yeah. I think
I would ask S.A. Azad to speak out his question to Master Bhai.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
ओके हाँ ओके नहीं, मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि जो प्रॉब्लम है उसको एड्रेस करने की जरूरत है ना। वेज किसने बोला है कि कम देना है? हम ये मान के चल रहे हैं कि जो सीवेज वर्कर है और सैनिटेशन वर्कर है उनको वेज कम ही मिलना है। इक्विपमेंट इज नॉट ए प्रॉब्लम। अगर उनकी सैलरी 70,000 80,000 होगी, क्योंकि उनको 6,000 जो आपने बोला भी है। अब हम अगर वर्कर का जो राइट है एज ए वर्कर, देखिए ये दोनों चीजों को अलग, जो आपने भी बोला कि जो एज ए कास्ट ऑक्यूपेशन था वो बिफोर म्युनिसिपैलिटी के आने से पहले था, और म्युनिसिपैलिटी में जो लोग काम करने लगे वो उनका एम्प्लॉय रिलेशनशिप डेवलप हो गया। अब उनको जो सैलरी है वो वेज नहीं होना चाहिए, वो कैलकुलेशन का गड़बड़ है। वेज में 300 कैलोरी का मिलता है, 2300 कैलोरी का और पैसा मिलता है, और उसमें 5 लोगों का रहने खाना पीना हेल्थ एजुकेशन सब कुछ मिलता है। तो अगर हम कैलकुलेशन गड़बड़ कर देते हैं तो 6,000 रुपये मिलता है, 6-12,000 तक मिलता है, और अगर हम कैलकुलेशन ठीक कर देते हैं तो 70-80 हजार रुपये मिलता है। तो उससे क्या होगा कि जिस घर में 70-80 हजार रुपये या 1 लाख रुपए जाते हैं तो उस घर का सिनेरियो चेंज हो जाता है। जिसमें ये 6,000 जाते हैं या 12,000 जाते हैं उसमें वही खाने तक सीमित रहता है। तो हम अगर ये यहाँ से अपने दिमाग से ये एक बात निकालें कि ये वेज का प्रॉब्लम है नंबर 1, जो म्युनिसिपैलिटी में काम करते हैं जिनका एम्प्लॉयर रिलेशनशिप है। क्योंकि ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ इंडिया में ही सीवेज वर्कर और सैनिटेशन वर्कर का काम, पूरे वर्ल्ड में होता है। वहाँ अच्छा वेज मिलता है उनको, वहाँ छोटे घर नहीं मिलते एक एक कमरे के, वहाँ भी बड़े घर होने चाहिए। तो अगर हम ये अपने दिमाग से निकाल दें कि सिर्फ ये यही है, भाई एम्प्लॉय रिलेशनशिप है उसका पूरा, और ये वो काम है जो जरूरी है, तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि इसको सैलरी मिलेगी, वेज नहीं मिलेगा। अगर हम ये लगातार इस बात पे नहीं बोलेंगे, नहीं तो इससे आप बोलेंगे ये बंद होना चाहिए, अरे बंद हो गया मतलब ए ने नहीं किया तो बी करेगा ना, तो बी को 6,000 रुपये मिलेंगे। क्यों मिलेंगे बी को 6,000?
ये चाहेंगे ना कि वो, हम ये चाहेंगे कि वो पूरा पैसा जो है उसको मिले, वर्कर को मिले तो ज्यादा अच्छा होगा।
ठीक है,
तो इस पर थोड़ा सा आप बोलेंगे तो ज्यादा अच्छा होगा।
यस, थैंक यू आजाद जी, थैंक यू फॉर योर इंटरवेंशन। I think what Azad ji has highlighted is a very important point here. That, as I said, there are very wide-ranging aspects to this particular problem here of sanitation workers, manual scavengers, and one has to really take into account so many things. So obviously, at one level, there is a need to have more mechanization of this particular work so that people are not going inside the sewers and cleaning that manually. Workers have to be given good equipment. But what he has highlighted is that the workers should be paid proper salaries, proper wages. And especially because what the kind of work they perform is extremely essential for the smooth functioning of the society, and without which no modern society can function smoothly. And if this is the importance that is assigned to this particular kind of work, then at least that workforce has to be really respected, and at the same time they have to be given proper wages, what he said as the living wage. And this is an absolutely important question, and for that to happen, the big thing that needs to change is contractualization.
Salary. Living wage is different. Salary is different. Or wage is different. Salary. And you receive.
What I was referring to is the kind of salary that is needed, that has to take into account all kinds of expenses, which is also calculated for the rest of the salaried jobs. And it can only happen when we have more salaried employment inside the municipalities. So for that to happen, there is of course a need to mobilize so that this particular contractualization has to stop. Once that stops, and then they are hired on regular employment, then they definitely, this particular question of unequal wages that is given as far as whatever their monthly salary is concerned, how it is calculated, that will definitely stop. Yeah.
There are no questions anymore.
Okay,
so I think
Yes, there are some questions here.
Hassan bhai, go ahead. So, if I allow to intervene in this regard, what
yes, please, yeah,
what Mr. Azad has said, well, right from my own experience here in Calcutta, and we still see in the streets of Calcutta, but I live in a very place where it is always ghettoized place, where Muslim bastis and the Dalit mohallas are very close by. So where we could see is that still even in the central Calcutta, in the very heart of Calcutta, without any kind of protection, anything, people directly enter into the manholes. The point is that apart from the salary thing, it's also about that the stigma attached to this kind of job. In that regard, my humble suggestion is that suppose there are for example, you are getting salaries by working in a shopping mall, or maybe they simply working in maybe a small shops, which gives around 10 to 15,000 per month, which is average salary in Calcutta, and but you get slightly higher in doing this job of entering into manual hold, not always, but in spite of that, the kind of stigma, the kind of humiliations you face in everyday life, in the public sphere, that is, I think the money can't compensate that stigma. What Professor Michael Sandel kind of argument he put, that's the kind of society we are building up. It's as a society which we don't value the human dignity. Where you can buy everything with money. We try to buy everything with money. Will that kind of argument, or technology driven argument, okay, introduce technology, things will sort it out, will that help in in building up social imaginations, or eradicating social stigma?
I think it's a very important question, Abdul, and thanks for highlighting that. So there are several aspects to it. when we talk of introducing technology and making it more mechanized and giving more nice equipments and other kind of whatever instruments are needed, is so that these people don't really come in direct contact with this kind of dirt, and it is cleaned in a most human manner. So that is one aspect of it. What you said about stigma is obviously there is a historical link to the caste here, because you have the lowest of the caste, which is the Dalits, who have been working on this. So therefore, this occupation itself has a stigma. Dalits themselves have a stigma, and so therefore it's not very easy in terms of getting rid of that stigma. But one of the ways it can actually change is when different groups in the society take up that occupation. It is only gradually with that this particular stigma that is attached might actually transform. The first obviously is that the nature of work, the way it is done, that has to change. In addition to that, their salaries and everything has to be reinstated properly, what is given. But more importantly here is also that when different sections from really different caste and religion, everybody actually does this occupation, it is not identified with the one of the lowest rungs of the society. That is when there is a scope for actually changing certain things. So unless and until we reach that stage, that kind of change in the psyche of the society, where that particular stigma that is attached to that work, that goes away, will take time. In general, the work cleaning itself has a stigma around the world. Okay, in India it gets mixed up with caste and other kind of problems with absolutely low paid, and obviously you can't live in a decent locality. So it has really linked to lots of things, and you end up living in a particular ghetto, as you said. So you are pushed into that ghetto because your monthly salary is absolutely so minimal that you can only live in those places. So this particular kind of change has to come from various quarters in general. Yeah.
Yes, there is another question from Narendra Singh. First of all, thank you so much. I'm asking what type of effort can make to end this manually cleaning? Is there any technology that can help, or how can we totally stop it?
I think this question has already been answered.
Yeah, I think I have said a little earlier, but let me reiterate the point here is that obviously these kind of practices have been stopped in other parts of the world. So it is definitely possible to stop here as well. For that, there has to be willingness from the state, the governments, and in order to happen that, we as a society, there is a need to create that particular pressure, that we have to be more sensitive to this particular fact that some people are engaged in this inhuman laboring work, which is actually so important for our own living, that we can't carry out our livelihood on everyday, very peaceful basis if they don't perform the function. So therefore, it is very much possible to transform that. Okay, there are 2-3 people with questions. Abdul.
Okay.
It's short. It's I think Azadji is again. Then you have Shovik. Then Laili. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, there's another question. Manual scavengers are neglected everywhere. In the context of geographical location like rural, urban, semi-urban, do you think the treatment differs? And don't you think that they are hegemonized and they are forced to think that this is their work? And they actually, from the perspective of psychological perspective, they think that there is no way out from this work.
Okay. Thank you. Well, Abdul, what I'll do is I'll also request Ajay to ask his question,
Sure,
and
sure.
then I will. Okay. Yeah.
Correct. Perfect.
देखिए मैं ये कहना चाहता था, जहाँ हम लोग गए थे पीछे, जहाँ आप गए थे उस गांव में, वहाँ जो
Yes.
सफाई कर्मचारी रहते हैं उनका 150-200 गज में घर है, बड़ा घर है, और बहुत उनके सभी, क्योंकि वो सैलरी 70,000-80,000 रुपए पर मंथ लेते हैं। उनकी फैमिली में जितने भी बच्चे हैं सब ग्रेजुएट और ये पढ़ रहे हैं, मेरा ये कहना है सैलरी जो है वो बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले करती है। नेक्स्ट जनरेशन में लोग अपने आप से दूसरे ऑक्यूपेशन में जाएंगे। अगर हम सिर्फ यही बात कहते रहेंगे, क्योंकि पिछले 70 साल में देखो कुछ हुआ नहीं है एक्सेप्ट स्टॉप कर दो और ये कर दो वो कर दो। हम क्या चाहते हैं कि क्या लोग इसी ऑक्यूपेशन में रहें, कास्ट के हिसाब से भी हम उनको अच्छी सैलरी क्यों नहीं देना चाहते, उसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही। और इतना पैसा हमारी सरकारों के पास, म्यूनिसिपैलिटी के पास है। अगर हम वेज का कैलकुलेशन, हमने कुछ एक रफ कैलकुलेशन किया था, जितना भारत सरकार लेबर मिनिस्ट्री को पैसा देती है ना, उससे कहीं गुना 2, 3, 4 गुना ज्यादा म्यूनिसिपैलिटी वर्कर की जो कॉन्ट्रेक्चुअल वर्कर हैं, और अगर उनको सैलरी दी जाए उससे कई गुना ज्यादा सिर्फ दिल्ली के म्यूनिसिपैलिटी कॉन्ट्रेक्चुअल वर्कर की सैलरी है। तो सैलरी बहुत बड़ा इम्पैक्ट करती है। देखिए जितने भी एक नंबर 1 और 2 क्लास के एम्प्लॉय हैं, उनकी अगर सैलरी 10 गुना कम कर दें तो पता चलेगा उनके घर में से क्या क्या चला जाएगा। तो सैलरी बिग रोल प्ले करती है सभी की लाइफ में।
yes.
और उनको जो A1 A कैटेगरी और 2 कैटेगरी के लोग हैं, उनके बच्चे आंगनबाड़ी में नहीं जाते, ना उनके बच्चे सरकारी स्कूल में जाते, बिकॉज उनको सैलरी मिलती है।
Yes.
इसलिए जो ये फैमिली है उनको भी सैलरी अच्छी मिलनी चाहिए और इस ऑक्यूपेशन में मिलनी चाहिए। 1 लाख रुपए 2 लाख रुपए तो सब छोड़ के आ जाएंगे।
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Azad ji. Thank you very much. Yes, Laili.
Laili, unmute yourself.
I don't know, is she there? Okay.
I think Maria is there. Maria would like to ask something. Okay.
Souvik is also there.
Is it the semis contingent?
Yeah, semis one.
Okay. What I can maybe I don't know if Laili is not around. I guess we can go with the next question. Okay. I think what I can't seem to unmute. Okay, can you type your question then? Yeah. Okay, yeah, please. Okay, so what the first question that was highlighted, and I think let me also start first with Azadji's comment, and actually what he's highlighting here is the fact that if salaries are given, as per what is required, according to the inflation of prices and commodities, and what is necessary for the entire family, then obviously the following generation do not necessarily stay in the same occupation. They actually they move out into different occupation because they are able to take higher education and they are able to take different kinds of newer occupations. So that is the point he's highlighted, and I think this is a very important, going back to his idea that we should stress more on the salaries. Okay, and in order to stress for salaries, we have to stress for more permanent employment rather than current contractual employment for them. This question about rural and urban treatment, actually it differs in a big way, because the kind of example that I was giving, that if the manual scavengers, particularly in the rural areas, if they refuse to work, there are social sanctions against them from the villagers, and they do not have enough resources to protest against them. In the cities, to a certain extent, because they live in bigger in bigger groups, there is a possibility of organizing some form of protest. But however, sadly, given the kind of situation they have been pushed into the contractualization, particularly, and so all these conditions which would have otherwise been enabling for organizing these kind of workers, so that possibility has gone down. And therefore, there is a stark difference between urban and rural. Rural is far worse, because rural does not even get reported. I mean, at least these urban deaths, they are getting to reported now. Different kind of media channels have suddenly become interested in this particular kind of occupations now. So even the mainstream media, with all kind of their progressive ideologies, they have not really given enough attention. It's only in the last 5-6 years after this particular act. So after all these social movement, which is led by these sections themselves, now they are finally giving attention to it. So we have to wait for some time to see whether this kind of intervention will have an impact. Yeah. Okay, so who is next?
There is a question from Shovik. Okay.
So, okay, yeah. Does the condition of migrants,
There is another question of Shovik.
condition of prolonged existence of capitalists coterminous with neoliberal policies? Okay. Sorry, what was the another question?
Yes. Just did Brahmanical? You can see
Okay.
that question.
Okay. Oh, yeah. It was asked earlier. Okay. Did the Brahmanical encrypted ideology force society to treat migrant workers' body as other? Okay. I think what the question that has been asked is that did the Brahmanical encrypted ideology forced society to treat migrant worker body as other and polluted in the public domain? What we need to understand is that the migrant itself is not a useful category in understanding the wide-ranging diversities that exist within the migrant laborers. So obviously, what happened with the pandemic, it was clear that the entire migrant laborers, they were walking back to their villages. But when we talk of particularly the idea of pollution, and of course Brahmanical ideology, we are specifically referring to those castes who bear the brunt of that particular system, and it is Dalits. So they are the ones. So that's why Ambedkar made a distinction between touchables and untouchables. So all those castes, that are there, which is non-Dalits, they are touchable. So that is, they can touch each other, and there is no practice of untouchability. But it is only the untouchables, that is the Dalits, they face this problem of pollution. It was their kind of shadow that was going to pollute somebody. It was their touch that was going to pollute the touchable. And so that is a little different. In the pandemic, even Amitabh Bachchan, when he was admitted to the hospital, he made a very insensitive remark by saying that he feels like a pariah. Now, pariah is this untouchable caste, the Dalit caste in Tamil Nadu. So obviously he's facing a little social, physical distancing from, as a celebrity, I'm sure he's not used to people running away from him. But this is the first time maybe they were not getting close, and therefore he must have felt a little existential crisis for a big star like Amitabh Bachchan. And that is the kind of experience. So one can imagine that if this particular small moment can actually make him feel so terrible about himself, then one has to imagine the kind of population that faces this every day on a regular basis, and the kind of impact that has on their minds. And this is not just some psychological thing that people think about certain communities as low or bad, because this has impact on their educational choices. They face discrimination in the schools, the kind of occupations they do. They face, despite having good professional qualifications, they face discrimination in the labor market. So it's a really wide-ranging thing, and I think one has to really take that into account. The second part here is about capitalism, neoliberal policies. I think I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning that as a country, during the time of independence, if you look at the proportion of people who are working in the informal sector, who do not have regular contracts, who have less than minimum wages, there is no social security benefit, that proportion was 92% of the workforce. So it's only roughly 7 to 8% who are part of what was known as formal sector, and even within the formal sector there were people who were on contract, but it is only the 7% of the workforce who actually were eligible for these better benefits. Now what has happened, and this is very important to actually note, that what happened with this, what we call as neoliberal policies, economic liberalization in the 1990s, is that 8% has shrunk to 4 to 5%. So that portion has changed. Otherwise, historically speaking, we have an overwhelming majority of the workforce in the informal sector. The tragedy now is that even those workers who were there earlier, now part of the formal arrangement, they had better salaries, like the municipality workforce. Now they are being hired on contractual basis. So now you go to any government office since 90s already. You look at the class 4 employees, they are hired on largely on contractual basis. Class 3 employees, you look at clerical positions, they are all hired on contractual basis. Now that is the biggest challenge. So if neoliberalism, broadly speaking, what we understand as a withdrawal of state, if that has to be understood, then it is for this particular section that got affected in a very big way.
Laili would like to ask a question. Laili, please go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
A little louder, but yeah.
Okay. I'll try. Okay, Sunil, thanks for that talk. I think it's really important that we're talking about sanitation workers because in some ways it is a global problem, right? In terms of COVID, we've seen that the worst impact or has been felt by workers who come from, who are sort of in particular professions in sort of related to sanitation and hygiene. I wanted to take you back to this moment that we're facing, right? COVID-19, which you've described as a transformative moment. And I'm wondering, because what we're seeing is really a society turned upside down, right? The academics don't matter so much, the statisticians don't matter so much. Things that we put that we said have been professions that we said that are really important are no longer as important. In fact, what we found important are those who are actually doing your who are selling your food to you, who are sort of cleaning the streets and cleaning your sewers. I'm wondering whether COVID-19 has created any particular momentum within the Dalit community itself in terms of how it's organizing and mobilizing against the conditions of their work. Is there a particular conversation that's happening? Is there a particular organization that's happening in this particular moment in time that's different? And is there a particular power that we see within the community itself in terms of how they can negotiate with their employers, with their state? Perhaps that's some, yeah, so that's, was that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I think, one of the reasons I started writing this particular paper, it's a very short paper that I started writing 1 or 2 months ago now, is because I clearly saw the absolute silence on this particular kind of workforce. Because I saw that the society in March end came to a standstill where people were really not moving anywhere. The society was quiet everywhere. I mean, I spoke to so many people. The societies were quiet. People were expected to stay inside, except one thing was constant. And that was this particular van that came to pick up the trash. And that did not change. So that actually was a striking moment, even for me, to realize that, look, when the whole world is actually at standstill, and this thing actually has to move. And that highlighted the absolute importance of this particular kind of workforce. And unfortunately, at least to the best of my knowledge, some people have written short pieces, opinion here and there, but by and large, the discussion for this workforce has largely been absolute marginal. And if you open any TV channel, particularly the news channel, the only discussion we have is so many people have been affected, so many deaths have occurred, so many police people, personnel have been affected, doctors maybe, but there is no discussion on how many people who have been cleaning these have died because of that. And that is the biggest challenge that is happening. One needs to really look deeper into this particular issue, but at least as of now, they have not been able to negotiate any kind of change for themselves. There could be wide-ranging factors why they have not been, but so far it doesn't look like they have been able to get for themselves a good deal given this crisis situation. Yeah.
Any other question?
I don't know. Abdul, who is asking question?
I'm just looking at the screen. Okay. It's over to chair, and then we will conclude then if there is no other question.
Yeah, looks like there is no question. So yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay, so it has been wonderful. I mean, all through after your presentation, there had been so many questions, and the questions clarified a lot of things. Basically, the two aspects that we have been talking about. One is the economic empowerment on the one hand. The other issue is obviously social empowerment. I mean, the issue of caste is not merely an economic problem in India. We all know this is practically also a deep-rooted social, we can say, socio-religious problem. So, I mean, when it comes to those people who are working as sanitation workers, though they practically belong to the lower castes, as you have said. So I would rather agree with the view that yeah, economic empowerment alone won't do anything. Neither, technological intervention will change things suddenly. What we need actually is to change things from the bottom, from the base. So we have to change our way of thinking. In fact, yesterday I was talking on a different issue. I had a talk, but then I was thinking of the existence of caste in the pre-colonial society, in the colonial society, and in the post-colonial society. And I mean, the pre-colonial has so many years, thousands of years in it. Now, but how deep-rooted is this problem that in no way, neither the post-colonial theory nor the other forms of theories that has come into play its role, they could properly address this issue. So unless and until I think we can address this issue of what you can say broadly social stigma, if you don't want to use the word gut, attached to different groups of people. It may be a caste-based thing, it may be a gender-based, it may be based on religion. So there is certain deep-rooted prejudices, and those prejudices are not mere mental things. They are also part of our social praxis. So unless and until we can make change from the bottom, then we can go up the ladder. I mean, yeah, economic empowerment is empowerment, bringing in tools and machines to do the work of the manual scavengers, obviously important, but what comes out of this lecture, comes out of the conversation that has been going on post-lecture, I mean, is the thing that we need to change things from the bottom, not from the top. So this should be the approach, I think. I mean, trying to change things from the top, once again, it won't help much because the base will remain the same. I don't know how to address it. Even the Marxists have failed to Marxists. I mean, I'm not talking about the governments or the political parties. I'm talking about the theories. Even when it comes to theorization, there has not been much of a way out. So, I mean, one is to identify the problems. That has been done properly, and you have also done in the lecture. But the other thing is to, come up with some kind of an idea, some kind of a theory, some kind of a theoretical praxis or practice, whatever you say, by which we can actually intervene in this. There is obviously a need for intervention, but how we can do that, that remains the big question. So I think if the speaker of Ode has to say something on this as a closing note, I'd be happy. Otherwise, I would say we can conclude this very productive talk of the day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yeah.
Thank you. Now I would request Professor Nargis Ahmed to deliver vote of thanks.
Thank you, Hassan Bhai. Assalamu alaikum and good evening once again to all of you present here. We have come to the end of this lecture series. I am privileged to deliver vote of thanks today and thank BASE to give me this opportunity. On behalf of BASE, Bengali Academia for Social Empowerment, I extend my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to our today's speaker, Dr. Sumit Maskar, for his excellent deliberation on the topic, the neglected warriors of Corona pandemic. And I must say, sir, from being from nursing fraternity, I was excited to hear nurses' name as neglected warriors among all others. Yes, it is true that all are trying their level best to fight against this virus at their own level. And there are so many multiple factors and problems. Then also, to some extent, I think recognition matters. So thank you so much, sir. And even BASE has tried to do bit for remembering those neglected warriors to arrange this kind of lecture today. So thank you, sir. It is great to hear from you. My sincere thanks goes to Muhammad Monirul Islam for chairing today's session well. Thank you, sir. I must thank BASE President, Vice President, GS, and all members, especially the team who are really working hard to make BASE lecture series happening successfully. Last but not the least, I thank from deep of my heart to our dear and beautiful audience throughout the country and even beyond the country also, who showed their constant interest in BASE lecture series happening more or less every day. So thank you all once again. Let me announce our next BASE lecture series number 37. It will be on 23rd August at 7 p.m. Topic is Maulana Bhasani, Red Maulana and Subaltan Muslims of South Asia. Speaker is Dr. Lailuddin from King's College,